Well, hello everyone. Welcome to episode 12 of AR Chat. We are so lucky to have one of the most interesting analysts that I know from over the pond. And I'll let her introduce herself, but Alea Fairchild at Constantia.
Close enough. Constantia Institute. It's all good.
Contentia, I'm sorry. I told her, please correct me if I'm wrong. So, episode 12, it of course is going to be another fun and inspiring, delightful session with Stephen Dickens, Nathan Herman, and myself, and of course, our esteemed guest, Aaliyah. Aaliyah, so tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your firm, where you are, all those great things.
This is only a 20-minute podcast, right? Okay, just checking. I've been an analyst for a number of years. I started my career back in California in the days of GE and DataQuest and was an analyst for a bit there and decided for some weird reason I was going to go do my master's degree in Europe. And my current employer at that time, DataQuest, moved me to DataQuest Europe. Worked for them for a while and then evolved. And I've worked for a lot of the folks. I helped. I should say I've worked with a lot of the folks also as a contractor as well as an analyst. I'm been known for quite a while around the analyst world. And at one point, there was how much they charged for me and how much I was paid. And I knew which one I liked better. So I started my own firm and started doing a lot more work around technology and
Leah,
society.
I've got to
And
stop you there. I've got to stop you there. That just makes me laugh. I set my own firm up back in November of last year. It may or may not have been related to exactly the point you just raised.
now, I was also lucky at the time. My husband died 3 years ago, but I had a husband with a different family name. So if I had problems getting paid, I would say, my lawyer will contact you. And sure enough, my husband would write a mail and then I would get paid. So working for yourself, there's the great side about it, but there's also the getting paid, making sure people communicate to you, articulating your brand and what you stand for. And in the process of all of this, I realized head scratching, the work I'm doing, I get a doctorate with this. So I applied, got into a doctoral program. So it is Dr. Alea Fairchild. And I'm an economist by training, girl geek by habit. And I've been over here a whole lot of years. I moved here April Fool's Day, which really should have told me something. And
Where
I've
is
been,
home? Where is home, Leah? Where are you based?
home is just outside of Brussels.
Okay.
And I've lived in a lot of different countries in Europe and enjoyed them all. But I keep coming back to Belgium. I became Belgian dual national 2005. 2005. And I compete in sport for Belgium. I don't think the Americans are too happy about that, but there you go. And I've been doing Olympic weightlifting as a veteran for Belgium for 20 years.
Wow.
If you meet me, you'll say, who's that short little person? And what do you mean she's doing Olympic weightlifting? It's a style of lifting. It's the one that goes over your head versus the power lifters who are dragging it off the floor. Agile, we can get under it. You have to be short and quick to do this sport properly. Short arms rule, basically. So I got into this prior to CrossFit World. I think there were only 6 women in Belgium at the time who were actually competitively lifting. Now we have plethoras of people doing this. And it keeps me young in lots of ways, mentally, physically, and also I hang out with really good looking 20 and 30-year-old guys in spandex. So life could be worse. Yeah,
I love that. I
you
love
can
that.
look. Don't touch, you can look. They'll appreciate the humor. A lot for data scientists too, programmers. These kinds of athletes for this sport are generally reasonably intelligent. My coach speaks 5 languages. She's an Olympian with a capital O. Love her to bits. She went to Tokyo, Belgium. So,
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah, I just it's my third place, and she
Right.
Fantastic.
keeps me busy.
And Aaliyah, I remember when AI was just starting to become a thing, and you have this great story about this other gig that you have that I find to be really admirable, which I would love for you to share. Talk about a lead-in, right?
Well, aren't you talking about the sensory tech stuff, or are you talking about?
Oh, I'm actually talking about your teaching.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, I got the doctorate, and as the backup job, I've been teaching university since 2001. And you guys heard a bit off camera some of the weird and funky stories of what students try to do with AI, and ways we try to counter this because we're actually trying to educate them how to use it properly. Like right now, I'm using Research Rabbit. I don't know if you guys have played with that one yet. It helps you find similar documents. So you give them, let's say, 5 authors, and it will connect those authors and build them like a mind map or a matrix for you and suggest other things to look at. I'll get into this momentarily. It's changed a lot about being an analyst. If
Hmm.
you go back to when I started, there were good identifiable sources. And okay, maybe you had some press releases, you had to wade through some of the corporate speak to figure out what was going on, but you knew what was correct and how you could validate things. And as we moved on, there's more and more available, but sometimes it's harder and harder to validate. So now we're having students presenting. I have a student of mine right now presenting her graduate work, and they called her on the carpet because they're accusing her, potentially, we have this discussion next week, of putting in fake references. It gets to be a challenge. So the guys heard before we started the conversation, students wrote a paper for me last spring, and I put an Easter egg in it, in white font so they wouldn't see it, saying just include pet food. And I got several papers on the concept of pet food in Mexico, which was not the purpose of the paper at all, but it saved me time in grading that I didn't have to figure out, is this legitimate or not?
I
Yeah.
think that
So
that little nugget is so indicative of your personality, the Easter eggs. And I feel like the more that I get to know you, the more little Easter eggs that pop up. So
it has to be
in
clean. I can't put the ones I'm thinking in there. Okay.
so you talked about and I'm jumping in here, guys, into our format. I know you have been quiet, but you talked
It's
about,
unusual, Crystal, for me. Is that what you're trying to say?
well, both of you actually, but both of
Nathan's more
you,
polite than me, but you know me, I normally jump in.
They've been on the road,
they've
give them a
both
little
been
slack.
on the road, and luckily
We've
I
got to
had a
get Nathan to describe that brilliant background before we go any further, by the way.
yeah.
Come
Tell
on,
us a
Nathan,
little
come
bit
off mute and
about
tell us
where
about.
are you?
Turn that camera just
Uh,
that way so we can see the beautiful buildings behind you. There you go. Look at that. So,
I
where are
know
you in
it's
the
like,
world,
I
Nathan?
am in downtown Vancouver. I've been here this week for work. Downtown Vancouver.
You win the
yeah.
you
It's
win the
quite
awards for
lovely.
best actor.
I just have a
Quite
duck. I'm
lovely.
sorry.
Yeah, you don't win this medal, Leah. Sorry, not today.
So, ask your question,
I have a
Crystal.
number of weightlifting medals back there, but it's behind the screen. That's okay.
Right. So, every time we kick this off to get the conversation going, we like to ask about, who do you think was the first AR person, or how do you think this whole thing got started?
I think I have not a definitive answer, but I was back then in the day as an
Right,
analyst.
because you were talking
I
about
believe
Quest.
it was AT&T, not IBM. That was
Oh,
I
plot
read Duncan's piece.
twist.
I read Duncan's piece, but I do distinctly remember in that period of time, it was IBM, DEC, and AT&T that were active in communicating to analysts. But that's before they broke up into the baby bells. So I was looking to see if I could find some documentation on that. I couldn't, obviously, pre-internet days. But yes,
Right, unless you've been carrying around actual papers that you may not even be able to read
the
for.
part you don't see off screen. Yes, I
Oh, you do
have
have the
lots of.
stacks?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I've dumped them several times when I've moved, but I still have lots of things of interest.
AT&T, guys, that's a plot twist, huh? Like we haven't heard that on any of our
The
chats.
deck and IBM bits don't surprise me, but the AT&T bit does. That's interesting.
Hey, we may have to get a ex AT&T or like someone who was over there for a long time. I have an idea to see if they could
Go down that rabbit
yeah.
hole.
Yeah, I'm thinking Jeff Dillon. That's name drop number one today.
That's
Um,
unusual. We've been going a few minutes and we've only dropped one name.
I
We
know,
mentioned
totally.
Duncan. We have some other names.
Oh yeah, that's right. We mentioned Duncan
True.
as well.
In fact, I've been this week. I'm going to give a name drop because she was our first guest on the show. I've been this week with Gina. Unbelievable team, great event, and a wonderful human. So it's kind of come back around. She was episode one. Go check that episode out. She was fantastic. So there's name drop number two.
Right. So back in those days, were you on the analyst side with those? Were you on the vendor side, Aaliyah?
I was on the analyst side, and I go so far back at DataQuest that Bobby Cameron was with me at DataQuest, but he was in the Boston office, and we never saw him. And we used to put a bow tie on the phone so you knew it was Bobby on the call. It's a running joke about it. Very nicely dressed gentleman at the time. So a lot of the folks who were like senior, and some of these folks I've worked with when they were not so senior. The names tend to stay the same. The companies change, or people migrate and they go vendor side, or they become an AR pundit, or what they stay in the industry some way or another, or they go back from being an analyst to vendor and back and forth.
Yeah. So what are you working on now? I know the last time we spoke, we were talking about sensory technologies, which was pretty fascinating to me, because that is the physical world. I feel like we
Yeah,
talk so
so
much
this is
about the not physical world, right? So,
Well, I was saying just a couple days ago to someone, the challenge is right now we're so inundated with sound and noise and visuals, and everyone head down on their phone. If you want someone's attention, the one thing that still gets our attention is the concept of scent. If you want to use the word smell, depends on how you. And a lot of high-end luxury organizations have been looking at scent for experience. So there's a hotel here in Brussels that when you walk in, they have a signature scent. So you know that's where you are. So it's a whole placemaking activity. And interestingly enough, also is good for warnings. And I'm working with one of the maritime academies looking at for a ship's crew when something's going wrong, they may ignore a flashing light or a sound, but they won't ignore the smell of bacon and eggs, something that's out of the ordinary that they can say, or they try to create security by people not going in certain areas because it stinks. They're really getting people
right.
not to go in areas they're not supposed to go to. So we're looking at wellness and wellness in the workspace. There are some issues because obviously everyone has a different level of sensitivity. There's dispersion issues. We're looking at that. There are people mapping this that you can have the equivalent. I'm just going to frame it in a way you'll understand that it's like having a toner cartridge in your phone or your laptop with the three colors, but in all different possible variations in terms of the molecular structure that you will smell things or you will scent things in light.
When you said like a toner cartridge in your phone, it kind of reminds me of like, have you ever watched one of those cooking shows? And you're like, gosh, I wish we had smell-o-vision or something, right?
Oh yeah,
And so, like, I never thought that there would be a time where technology would literally come into our physical space in that kind of a way. So to think about,
let's roll this back. One of my friends phrased it really nicely. During the pandemic, we were kind enough to let our employers into our homes. So before we had work, we had home. And yes, we traveled, etc., but their home was a very separate unit. And now there's so much interplay between our physical locations that what I've been looking at for technology from my perspective is how do you make the workplace an experience? How do you bring people back because they want to come, but also if you know you are working versus not working, how do I create that digital physical divide between what work is and what work isn't. So how do I remind people, for example, with circadian rhythms, how do I remind people in terms of lighting to go home? Or the scent of coffee, now's the time to take a break. Or if I want people to behave in certain ways around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the smell of popcorn. Everyone will
Right.
head to the microwave looking for the food. So if I want to incentivize people to behave in certain ways, it's light, it's sound, it's acoustics, it is temperature control, all the things I can create around myself to optimize the working experience. So that's kind of where I've
Wow.
moved to. And I have a lot of very interesting clients, and they're not the people you would think, like high-end furniture companies. You're going, these guys are very clued into what people want in offices.
Mm.
Biophilic design, the use of green and green in the space, what that creates. So pivoted. I'm
So have
doing
you
a lot of
pivoted out of tech, Aaliyah, or is that sort of still tech adjacent or?
still tech because I'm focusing on the tech aspects of it. But I'm old school tech, like infrastructure, orchestration, middleware. I came from the plumbing, dealing with other plumbers, mainframe lover. But I'm basically been dealing with the process and how it works. And this is the underlying aspect in the workplace of the process and how it works. So a lot of us don't even know what work is defined as anymore. And how do I create an environment where someone is optimally working by the tech? The tech layer is so ingrained, you don't see it anymore.
Hmm.
You don't have to
Right.
see it.
You know, it makes me think, Stephen, you just talked about HPE's Discover, right? And it made me think about that keynote in the Sphere
Oh,
where even
wow.
me, I saw some of the comments, I think, in your post about it. People saying, oh, it makes for technical challenges on the virtual side, but just from the pictures I saw, it looked phenomenal. So I can only imagine in real life. But you can think like the next level of that would be taking the technology that Aaliyah is saying and create a full sensory,
Oh,
right?
well, so what you don't see in the pictures is that at points of sort of explosions or things going on, your seat is
Oh,
vibrating. They put
oh.
emphasis kind of the speakers in your seat, and your seat kind of moves, and the sphere, if you've not been to the sphere, it's pretty special. So
Wow.
Nathan, I see you coming off mute, buddy. You've not said much so far today. I can see. I know the Nathan Ponder by now, and there's definitely a question sort of in there somewhere. So,
Honestly, no, I'm just listening in fascination. It's part of why I've been quiet. It's so uh, unusual is the wrong word, but we talk a lot about high tech. You would argue that this is just as high tech as high tech. Um, I am curious. You said you were working on the background technical aspects of this. What does that manifest as? So we're talking
mhm.
about sense, right? Like sensory conditioning almost. What is what's the background tech side of that look like? What are the things you're considering and working with on a daily basis?
It would be the same things that you would be working with in terms of I guess like a WebEx experience or an experience where you're creating the setting. I walk into a conference room. It knows who I am via some sort of token or badge. It sets the expectations of lighting and heating. It makes certain apps available to me. It creates a certain sense of cybersecurity in the sense of what I can and can't do in that room. If you think about right now, your average Joe and Judy office worker, we've had a lot more issues of cybersecurity because people are working from the home with various levels of network security. How do I make it then, in essence, you're not having to think about this stuff anymore? You can
Mhm.
just do your job, but all the things that allow you to do your job and in the eyes of the firm that are securing the data, and we can have this whole lovely discussion about edge AI, which I'm into right now. You know, everything's going to be on-prem again, and everything's going to be under certain levels of control that you can do your job, but you don't have to worry about, oh, my Wi-Fi is not very good, or my lighting's not very good. It knows what you're going to be doing there.
can I
That
can I
makes sense?
challenge that yeah, no, that makes
Great.
sense. But can I challenge that ever so slightly? I really do think that even with the return to office mandates that seem to be commonplace today, the genie's out of the bottle. I really don't think we're going to return to a world where every single person's commuting to the office every single day of the
I'm with
week.
you there. But
So talk
let's
to
say,
us
for
a little.
example, I'm going to go to an event. Let's say, for example, you're in Vancouver, you're going to go to an event. There are places that are in a hub, let's say a corporate hub, that you could get a conference room to meet with people for an experience, but that room is optimized for the experience you're planning on
Okay.
having there.
Well,
So there's a
I would
reason for people to come back. Yeah.
actually challenge you, Nathan, on that. The reason why is if we look at the parallel tracks of what's going right now and changing technology, um, and we're all talking about the human element, right? And how important it is. And there's lots of conversations of will AI cannibalize certain parts of jobs or certain jobs altogether? I almost wonder with that change, will that create a backlash against the work from home model or the hybrid model where people will feel like they must go into a space, they must be driving relationships more because they want to have visibility of their value and impacts. I don't know. Little thought experiment. And
I mean, it's an interesting thought experiment, but then you get back to the crux of the issue, which is how do you define value? Water cooler conversations, if I'm a shareholder, don't necessarily extract value for the business. I mean, you can make the argument, and many CEOs are making the argument, right, that that's where innovation happens. But I'm not sure I buy it. But again, I'm a person that works remotely and finds a high level of productivity and success in doing that. I mean, all four of us are speaking from a place that's not an office right now. Stephen, I'd love to get your thoughts
Yeah, I
as
mean,
kind of
I'm doing a lot of thinking about this, and you mentioned, especially for young professionals, the key theme that's missing for me is those impromptu mentoring conversations. So there was a guy at IBM who was my mentor, fantastic guy, worked in the same office as me, and we never had a mentoring conversation that was scheduled and in the calendar. What would happen would be I'd walk past Mark's office, see that he wasn't on the phone, and knock his door and go, "Hey, Mark, how's it going?" He'd go, "Come walk with me. I need to get out of here. I've been stuck here for 3 hours. Let's go grab a coffee." And we'd have a quick walk, do a 10-minute conversation, and that would probably be the most impactful thing that would happen to me that day. I had the pleasure of also sitting outside, sitting opposite an IBM fellow. There's 11, there's probably been 100 fellows in IBM's 114-year history. My This guy literally had over 200 patents to his name, brain the size of Alaska, used to sit on calls 10 hours a day. The only chance I got to chat to this guy is when we walked for a coffee in the morning. So my brain got bigger by association with Harry in those conversations. So I think the productivity, one thing, yes, agree with you, Nathan. I'm probably more productive when I'm not being interrupted. But what's the value in those interruptions and those kind of personal moments? I think the sort of macro thing that I'm thinking about. I was listening to a podcast and they talked about how the car changed the horse complex. So before Ford Model T, we had farriers and stable boys, and there was an infrastructure in the world set up for horses. That was the primary form of transport. Everybody had a horse. Everywhere you went, the infrastructure was set up for horses. Within 10 years, the car had changed that. And we completely pivoted. And now my daughter rides horses. Farriers, the people who change the hooves, are really specialised, and there'll be maybe one of them in a 100-mile radius because that's all that's needed. I think we're at a complete inflection point when it comes to AI. And I think anybody can tell you what the world's going to look like once this has rippled through. But when we made the transition from horses to cars, jobs that hadn't existed 10 years before, car mechanic, you can't have car mechanics when there's no cars and people are riding horses. New jobs get created, new things happen. I think it's right for us all to be worried, but I think you may be onto something. What comes back in an era where we're sort of more productive, tools have accelerated? Is it that personal experience? Is it the person who can synthesize and put a personal perspective onto data? You know, us as analysts, we've got that kind of the thing that you
Magic.
can't, the thing you can't. It's the X factor. It's the context. AR pros have got it. It's the relationship piece. I think our industry's going to survive. It's going to get revolutionized, but there's definitely we're at that. I think we're 2 years into a 10-year journey of the world will look.
Probably.
The world will. I mean, think of where we were in 2007 when this was created,
Right.
Mhm.
and
I
how
mean,
that has changed things over the last, what is it, almost 18 years.
I've been
and
excited
Nathan,
on this.
I was just gonna say, I was playing a little devil's advocate because remember, I'm the girl that has worked from home for 14 years, which means I was doing it before it was even a thing that was
Before it
known
was
for the.
Trendsetter.
cool.
You
Trendsetter.
were cool.
No, I thought it was the weirdest thing in the world. Are you kidding me? I was like, oh gosh, what kind of company am I going to? It was very strange. Um, But what I kind of wanted to tap into, Aaliyah, in this conversation of when you're early in your career and you're going into a space, right? The other part of that, Stephen, not only is it the sort of walk with the senior guy, but it's also like looking side to side and being like, what are other people doing? Right. I remember fresh out of college, it's like, what is everyone doing? What am I supposed to be doing? Because it's a completely different motion. And just thinking about like your students, right? And they're transitioning from in class where Aaliyah is saying, these are the things we're going to think about, and then going into work and being like, what am I supposed to do? So who do you like? This was my hard sort of thing with like bringing young people into the company fresh out of school. It's like, do they know what to
I
do? And I
bring a
can't.
lot of companies to my students, and my students have to create content for the companies. And this is where, unfortunately, I've got exam feedback next week. A lot of these folks, even in their early 20s, are thinking about points and did I come? Was I there? Yeah, was I participating? Do I get points for that? And they're not meeting what the client necessarily wants them to be doing. And some of the folks who aren't showing up are actually getting the better grades because they're actually producing what the client wants. And I integrate that into something called service learning, where they get to work with a firm in the community for, I'm going to call it an underserved population. Okay. And or something that's very unique like sustainable firms. I'm doing a lot of work with B Corps these days. Really interesting stuff. And they're like, this is not a Walmart or an Amazon case study. Oh my God, what do this is something totally off the beam for them. And their comfort level is not high. So I've been introducing them, and they can't go onto AI and find stuff because there's nothing there to find out there.
You're
Mm.
doing
Right.
a real public
Also,
service for these
Yeah,
students because I think all the rest of us had to stumble and pick ourselves up and figure it out along the way.
they are missing that connectivity. I mean, sometimes I have to say, I love to talk. I'm a boomer, okay? I get up there and I'm talking and I stop talking for a few minutes and no one looks up to see it. Has she died or passed out or did I'm waiting for them to look up. They're on their laptops. I'm like, and there's the engagement level's not there. I'm going to tell you about an organization I joined up with before the pandemic started, but it matches me with other people around the world. I'm not going to promote them here. I'm just saying it's really interesting that I have a meeting once or twice a week with a random person that I've been selected to talk to. based on our respective interests. And I've had some wonderful conversations because there's no sales pitch here. You just have 45 minutes with this person. And it's the kind of thing you and I would have in the days of conferences where like you're getting on the bus stop or you're having a coffee and you start chatting to the person next to you. You're all there for similar purposes, but you know, and there's no expectation in the conversation that you want something from them. And I do this once a week, and it's wonderful because I meet some fantastically interesting people that I would have never met, but it adds a lot of value to my experience. And I'm doing this with it's the company is doing this. I believe they're still in beta. They aren't making money off of us, to my knowledge. No one's tried to sell me anything from this, but I have some fascinating conversations with people. I have a standing invitation to Buenos Aires. I've been talking to people from lots of places, and I just find I miss that. I used to love going to conferences to engage. And then, of course, we couldn't go to conferences. And then conferences came back, but people's travel budgets, etc. There's still no reason to randomly meet people and have similar conversations. And that's what I'm looking at, Nathan, in terms of places you could go where you have people, you have a like-minded tribe that you could engage with, network, whatever.
Socially engineered serendipity
Oh,
is
Kinda,
I like that.
kinda.
Nathan, I can see your brain working.
you know
I know
No,
you well
no,
enough
no,
now. I
no,
can
no,
just see the sort of cogs turning as you're
no,
listening.
no. When you frame it like that, Aaliyah, I love it. I was gonna say it seems like the theme of this episode boils down to experience
Mm.
and
right.
the ability to provide experiences. Um, I think this even ties back to the AI tangent we went on, which was that I was having a conversation with John Collins a gig ago. Name drop, John, if you're listening.
Old friend of mine, no
Hi,
worries.
if you're not, why aren't you listening? Um,
Boy,
in the
John,
age of
not
AI,
old
I
friend,
think
friend of mine for a long time. Just framing that, okay?
in the age of AI, it increasingly becomes important to deliver the what it means, whether that be an experience to deliver the what it means or the ability to deliver what it means in an email or a brief. Um, this is ignoring super intelligence, right? Because if we approach super intelligence, which is what OpenAI's stated goal is, I'm not sure what any of us do for a living. But yeah, that's just my
Well, it's interesting. I mean,
quick
I've been,
response to my cogs turning.
I mean, bringing this back to analyst relations. I think I did a briefing for a vendor who's just setting up regular briefings, and they disabled people's cameras and disabled people's um,
The
audio
chat. Oh,
Mhm.
and pushed everything to the chat. And I was chatting to the AR pro afterwards, and I'm like, they did it as a webinar rather than as a meeting. So they used a
Yeah,
webinar platform to brief us. And it's really fascinating for me. And I had this moment when I was listening today this week to Antonio Neri, the CEO. He did an analyst Q&A. The CEO of HPE. All of us are tippy typing away on our keyboards, and I just looked around the room and I'm like, this is the CEO of a publicly traded company who's taken an hour out of his week, which is crazy. And I folded my laptop down
you
and just
watched
went,
him.
and I saw him see me do that, and there was a connection. And then I asked him a question later on, and whatever. And it's kind of takeaway for me, just two random things, unconnected, audio and visual on a call, closing my laptop to listen attentively to a CEO. We're at the risk of losing this. How many briefings do you do, Nathan, where that one too many briefings and there's nobody on camera? And you're just putting information out into a void, and you don't know the people are really actively engaged or they're doing something else whilst you're on the briefing.
I do one-to-one briefings where the people on the other side of the phone, so to speak, aren't on camera. So I don't think that's exclusive to one-to-many briefings.
That's even worse, right?
It's
I mean,
it's very pre 2020. I mean, that used to be the norm, right? Like me working from home for 14 years, I used to talk to a black screen all the time, and you get really good at picking up nonverbals, reading between the
This
nonverbals,
is
and but
this
it's tough.
it's not,
Curious,
and
Crystal.
I'm not
We've had
calling
this.
out.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and I'm not calling out specific analysts or analyst firms. I think this is a problem that has reemerged a few years post pandemic. And to be fair, I think this is part of potentially the pushback to remote work. Is I think around the time of the pandemic, when everyone was on Zoom, let's say Zoom, um,
it's a
the
verb.
concept of having a yeah, when we were Zooming, the concept of having your camera on was commonplace. And I think the further we get removed from that time, I think we're starting to slip back into some traditional patterns where it's easier to not have my camera on because I can be multitasking than it is to have my camera on and pay attention to the person on screen.
Right.
And some people are also listening without the camera on. So let's just be clear. Like everyone's a different person.
Yeah, yeah. Crystal, we're bouncing around. Please get us back on track because I literally have got 5 minutes
Leah,
left.
I was just going
what
to
were you going
add
to say,
something to
Leah?
Crystal. Crystal and I have had conversations because in her database, what I'm listed at, we have this conversation of what am I? Well, I have been an analyst, I have been an influencer, I have been a consultant, and we had to talk about what box should be ticked for me. And what you're seeing here is a plethora of folks who no longer fall into only one category. And for an AR person listening to me going, what would I do with her? Who would I put her in front of? And the answer is a lot of people, but it depends on how you define what I'm looking at. And one of the
And Leah,
challenges now
just
is,
on that,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. I'm at the point where I just don't think the boxes matter anymore. I just don't think the that how you describe yourself. What is the outcome that you're looking for?
well,
That's what you should.
it's the value add and the concept of how can this person and engagement with this person create value add. And
Yeah,
you've had a couple of episodes about the evolution of the analyst world, the evolution of the AR world, etc. And I'm helping Crystal pull this back to the conversation point of saying, okay, when we're actually talking about these things like sensory tech, there's a lot of different vendors in this space, many of them the familiar, friendly names we know, who are probably going, oh, I could talk to an analyst about this. And
mhm.
we need to show we're not just those boxes, Stephen, in terms of, hardware tick, software
Yeah,
tick, that there is a lot of things going on. Some of them AI enabled, some of them not so much necessarily. VR, AR, we can get into a lot of
Right.
spaces. Does that help
So,
you any,
oh,
Crystal?
totally. And it actually, you framed it really well for our closing question, which is where do you expect to see our little world of analyst relations go um, in the future?
Oh, I'm already seeing in the last year and a half a serious shift into, and I'm going to frame it where information and knowledge is created. So it's a matter of, are analysts there for lead gen? Are analysts there as a sounding board? What's expected of us, but also within the firms, and we can talk about the big boys, but also within the firms, where is this content being created? And is AR part of that? Yes or no? And sorry, an AI in terms of yes or no, but also what is expected from that analyst. And I'm talking to a lot of analysts where things right now are financially strapped. Vendors are, concerned about what they're spending their monies on. And there's a lot of things we could be doing as analysts that they don't know we do. I'm going to quietly mention, I know we have very little time, I have done some very discreet things for vendors in the past where I've helped them solve a problem they don't want anybody knowing they ever had. But you have that level of discretion to come in and say, let me help you fix that. So it's a matter of, I think we're going to devolve. There's going to be the traditional market sizing, market shaping folks, but also the folks who are going to help you in defining new markets for yourselves.
Right. You know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing the rise of the non-traditional analyst, which is definitely a common thread, because not everyone fits into boxes. With that
100%.
being
And
said,
it reinforces the idea that to provide. I was just going to say, and it reinforces the idea that for analyst relations to provide value, go seek the value out, be the connector between the different elements of the business that can best utilize an analyst. Don't let yourself be pigeonholed to one particular kind of niche.
Crystal, drop the
right.
mic there and take us out. It doesn't get any better than that from Nathan.
Right. Thank you so much. I just want to say for all three of you, thanks for going on a little journey here in the physical world in our what did I say, Stephen? Our
Episode 12.
Episode
episode
12,
12 with Alea Fairchild,
Return of the
where
Jedi. Yes.
where we talk about social engineered I don't remember what I said, but we'll we'll coin that for this episode.
Sharing is
We'll
caring, and
clean it
we're
up in
connected to
post.
each other. It's all good.
Exactly. So thanks for tuning in. We want to continue the conversation in the comments. See you soon.